about that time again, ISK Legacy, but just before week one formally kicks off, I know technically we got the first games in, but it's not really happening until the first Sunday kicks. I want to get our draft grades to remind us of what we did last weekend. Now, first off, amazingly, we actually went 10 for 10, not just live on draft, but actually at one point in time, even with all of our cell phone related charging issues, we still managed to be all 10 on the screen. I'm hoping that can be a yearly thing because that was fantastic. Did take me a week to get through this, and that might bode not so well for my future endeavors or my plans to try and keep these videos going as best I can week by week. We'll see how it goes. For this particular one, I normally went by draft grade in reverse order, but for some reason, I know my draft always gets rated very poorly by Yahoo. I know Maxon had the best draft according to Yahoo, but I actually can't find any of the other orders, and I looked for a while, and I kept reverting me to other leagues. I eventually gave up. I'm just going to go in order of how we draft in terms of the random pick that we went for. But for each person, to try and keep it as short as I can, don't roll your eyes when I say that, 5 S's and 1 draft comp. So I've got your stud, what swings, steal, stash, and a sucker pick. Then, like I said, we'll give you a draft comp, and then we'll get on to week one. So let's get kicked off. Kicking off, our first person to nominate someone, and obviously someone who went big early, our defending champion in Gene. Bijan's obviously your stud, although we do have some people right behind that you spent. You really are top 3 heavy in that way. We're going to find that with a lot of people, but I think yours kind of stands out. In terms of your swing, and by swing I mean what might swing your success, could be the reason why you win or maybe the reason why you don't. You seem to dive in deep with the AFC North. We've got Chase, you got Burrow, you got Moss, all representing Cincy. You even went Cleveland with Jerry Jeudy. I think you look at Pittsburgh in terms of Pickens. So you really need that specific conference and that division to step up for you. I think that's going to be a big deal. In terms of your steal, it could end up being Hawkinson because you took him for $1 at the end and you can store him on IR for a bit, and when he comes back, that could be a huge asset. I also did put potentially stealing some of your QBs. You didn't spend a lot of money on them and they're a little bit older, but that actually had me drop down to potentially the sucker market. Now, you went big 3, Barkley, Chase, and Robinson, and then you tried to budget here on out. And so I think in terms of the sucker picks, some of your backups or potentially the bench, you did dip into some teams like Washington or the Giants that maybe aren't, and even Tampa Bay and Mayfield, not teams I'm huge on, but if you don't need your bench that much, then it might not hurt you at all. In terms of your stash, someone I think would pay off if you can afford to keep him on your bench for a bit while he gets adjusted. I got Brian Thomas Jr. I was big on him. I can't remember why I didn't buy him, actually, because I meant to, but perhaps I got distracted. In terms of a draft comp, I mean, you are our defending champion, but if you look at the team, it's kind of tighty-whitey-ish, like Saquon Barkley, not necessarily a sexy pick, but I think he could be incredible in Philadelphia. Jamar Chase, very sexy pick, but obviously with Cincinnati's offense, you don't know, but your big 3 are electric. But looking after that, the Brian Robinsons, the Pickens, the Kirks, the Singletaries, they could just get the job done, but like I said, very tighty-whitey-ish, and yet you are clearly a killer because of how you came back last year. So I had you down as Walter White. Episode 1, he's in his tighty-whities. You don't think much of him. But by the end of this episode, or into this series, he is the one who knocks, and you are the one that took us all down. So we can joke about how nice you are as a person, and, oh, Joe Flacco, isn't that funny? But who walked away with the title? That's right, Gene. It was you. I make the joke every year / every week. No one wants to hear me talk about my own team, so I'm just going to jump right into my own picks. I had Achane as my stud, which actually, in reading that back to myself, does not bode well. Maybe that's why I got a D. My swing, I think I went young QBs. Now, these are the QBs I wanted. Love, Stroud, and Daniels. They were big on my board. They were people I wanted to take down, so I'm happy with them, but I can see, well, we already know one of them got hurt, and so the other 2 are going to have to step up. I think my steals, I mean, personally, it could be J.K. Dobbins. Someone's going to run the ball a ton for the Chargers. I don't love that he's the one that I have in the backfield and that I have to root for, but you want a piece of that backfield for sure. I actually think in a more safe environment, I think Shakir in Buffalo is going to be great. I think someone needs to catch that ball. Might as well be him. My stash, if I can hold on to people like Steers, and I know I got made fun of for Rico Dowdle or some of my younger players, I think if I can keep them around, I think they could provide some value. I know some of them might get some starts early or some might get some starts later. So that's where I was going with that. In terms of my sucker pick, honestly, I do kind of like my team. Rico Dowdle, probably not the greatest of picks, and so thank you for pointing that one out, folks. The Brandon Cooks, the Gabe Davis, they were very uninspired picks at the end, which is not really much like me, but I was trying to, I took so many big swings and chances. I was trying to provide some form of something just in case things went south. And so for me, as much as I don't like him as an actor, the idea of Tom Cruise, I was thinking Cole Trickle. Am I going to be at the beginning of the movie? And spoiler alert, I actually used this for another draft I did. Not one that anyone will see the video of because it's another league, but am I going to be the Cole Trickle at the beginning? That's all immature. My players don't develop. I'm reckless and off the road. Or am I going to pull it all together and all of my big hits or my big swings end up landing? Even Cooper Kupp as the first person I bought isn't exactly a for sure thing. So I could be, to quote another racing movie, if you're not first, you're last. So you might as well go for the W, right? Jeff, you were the third one to throw some people on that board, and I think looking at your team, I bet you end up getting most of the people you really, really wanted because you certainly were willing to spend on those guys. For your stud, I got to say Breece Hall, not just did you spend the most amount of money, but obviously he's super coveted this year. For your swing, in terms of what's going to dictate, I think if you look at your wide receivers, you have a lot of them, and some of them are unproven, and some of them are very proven. So I think you knew you were taking big swings, and you can play multiple wide receivers, and they're going to be very, very big asset for you. I'd also know you enough to know maybe you're going to fish some out there and see if you can upgrade at a position if needed. But now you're not really super dependent on one of them. If Harrison comes out and he's a bit slow to get some action, so I think you got yourself covered there. In terms of your steal, I looked at James Conner for $8. And later on in the draft, I think, if you look at Arizona's offense, a lot of people wanted a piece of that. Now, you already got a piece of that in Harrison, but if they score a ton, they're that perfect team that their defense isn't supposed to be good and their offense is, so they should have tons of reps. He could be someone who gets you a lot of points. Stash, thinking in the same offense, Trey Benson, if you can hang on to him. I know sometimes you have to drop someone, then, he might be someone on that list, but if you can hang on to him, you've got your handcuff, but also he's got some talent. Your sucker pick, you went Watson. I mean, I'm a Cleveland fan. He's just so tough to cheer for, but I get it. You needed a quarterback, and if he's on, it could be fine, but I still had to point out to the sucker pick. To be honest, this is going to sound like a weird comp because both of us have left the nation, but you kind of went big five. I could not think of the Kenyan National Parks when I thought of you, and I didn't want to pick one animal. Your big five are clearly going to dictate where you're at, and then everyone else, it's just who can kind of rise up, and is Trevor Lawrence going to overperform? I actually think he will, but that's not a gimme. So you are really going to go as your big five take you. Fortunately for you, it's a pretty good big five. To follow up our big five guys, our big six guy, aside from the fact that you probably do want to play Marco on week 6, his team was pretty loaded together. I think for you, your stud, Tyreek Hill, obviously for a lot of people, the wide receiver 1, although he did sneak out A.J. Brown, which was on most people's top 10 as well, so well done there. I think your swing, the thing that's going to really dictate your success, you did that quarterback run right in the middle for 5, for 7, and for 9. Weirdly enough, it was Bo Nix for $9. That was your most expensive quarterback. Geno for 7. Stafford, who I actually think was massively undervalued because, the Rams offense should be there this year, and turns out he's going to be the guy that throws that ball. I'm actually big on 2 of those 3 offenses, so I would actually be on the favorable side of that swing, but if they do fall apart or if you have some issues, quarterback depth could be an issue for you. Steal, I got Coleman just because I think Buffalo, again, is going to have a decent enough offense, and they're definitely going to have to pass the ball. So as a young player, I think he's going to come along and actually really help you out. I was going to put him on your stash, but then I put Mitchell instead. I think Indy's another one that as Richardson grows, so too will their offense, and someone like that, if you can hang on to him, I don't know if he's going to be a week 1 impact, but he could be an impact later on. In terms of your sucker pick, Mike Williams, I get it, but it just feels like he's going to be that guy who's 1 week goes off and that 1 week he's on your bench, but I could be totally, totally wrong. Let's be honest, though, you are super top heavy. Not only was week 6, but you could say you have a big 6. Now, I'm happy to be big on teams like Seattle, so I'm happy you got in there. But if I'm thinking of a top-heavy kind of situation, I don't know, for some reason I was thinking more in the Sydney Sweeney variety. You might be one note and we don't know much about it, and like I said, quite top-heavy. But the top is a good top, so I think you're going to be formidable. And if a few of your people down low the comp is now ending when I mention this, but if a few of your people can come up, you might actually end up being some Lego, the league winner. Woody, it was great to see you on the draft this year. I know apparently you just rolled off of another draft, so we were just part of the process for you, but it was awesome to have you in on the video for a little bit while your phone was charging, or when your phone charged. For your stud, I got to go St. Brown, although for some people they would also throw Garrett Wilson on that, and I think you probably paid a little bit less than you probably needed to on that one. I think he could have gone for a bit more. For your swing, and this is going to be something that comes up a lot in your draft, I think you took a gamble on a few running backs. Now, you did it with enough that I'm thinking some might pay off, and I'll get to two in particular when we get to stash. But you're, Gibbs, Cook, White, Warren. I'm not necessarily huge on all of those offenses, but I think if a few of them kind of pay off long enough, I think you'll be okay. If not, you might have to make some moves, but you're not allergic to making a lot of moves. You're still worthy. Can't believe, he went for $10, so obviously people know he was going to be good. He's another guy that I kind of wish I just would have kept bidding for, so well done there. Your stash, obviously you got two guys starting on the IR in Chubb and in Brooks, so that's going to open up your roster a little bit, and if they can come back and actually be a bit more dominant by the end, which is kind of that sucker pick. A lot of your mids, you notice I keep focusing on the running back because I like your team. I think you got great wide receivers. I think you got great quarterbacks. It's just going to be, as your running backs, can you get by enough, and can some of these healthy guys come back so that you've got some strong support at the running back position? I would say you're normally in it, and again, you're not allergic to moves, so I would say that's probably not so much of an issue for you. In terms of comparison, I know this one gets thrown around every once in a while, but maybe you're just the Czech version of Leo DiCaprio, because aside from a couple people here that you might have as your buddies, like the Daxes in the world, it looks like, and even Chubb, I guess, between Worthy, Levis, you got Brooks. Zamir's pretty young, Warren's pretty young, McBride, Cooks, Gibbs is young, St. Brown. You got a super young roster. So again, aside from a few of your friends like your quarterbacks and Kyler and Murray, you're going to DiCaprio everybody, right? Once you get to 26, you kick them off the yacht. So you keep them young everywhere else, and even the Josh Palmers of the world, who's going to step up, who's going to get the playing time. You make them work for it. So could work out for you. And like I said, I've already expect by the time I go on, you've already made 10 to 12 adds and drops, and your roster is totally different. Connor, and I think still Samish. I didn't actually see if you added him again this year, but I know you got people you call all over the world for advice here, and you've been together for the last couple of years, and it's gone pretty well for you. So I'm going to assume, I know I could just double check it, but I'm already recording. Not going to happen. You're always a competitor, always near the top of the class here. I think you've made the last couple finals, so I think we already know that you're in it to win it. You're studs, quarterbacks, and you weren't shy about letting us know about that afterwards, 30 and 31 respectively, which smart move. You got Allen and Hurts on a lot of people's boards. Top two, or certainly two of the top five quarterbacks, definitely, without argument. So I think there you're probably set. In terms of your swing, here's where I think your running backs come in. You went for some people like the Whites, or just one White, Rashad, who had a great year last year, Kamara, who we know can catch as long as that offense is okay, and then Mixon, who's very unsexy, but he's in a very sexy offense. And then you didn't really go for a lot of depth there, so I think that's going to be an interesting position for you. If those guys pay off, I think you're great. If they don't, that could be a massive swing. In terms of steal, I'm a big fan of your $5 pickups in Seattle there with Smith and Jigba, and then Jacksonville's Ingram. I know, again, Ingram, not someone everyone covets there, but man, does he get a lot of targets, and Jacksonville's getting a lot of play, and that gives you a lot of depth for your sucker pick, which I had Pitts. Now, he might be huge, and he might go back with this offense to the 1,000-yard receiver that we know and love, or he could be that frustrating last couple of years, but I think Ingram actually gives you that confidence to put him out there, and then you're fine. The other sucker, I think here, you are attached to offenses like Carolina and Tampa Bay a little bit more than you probably want to, so that could be kind of tough. But I think we know you're in it to win it. Obviously, every year you want to be competitive, and last year you almost got there. And so when I was thinking of comps, I was also looking at Josh Allen, and I know and the next person up, I'm going to be talking more about the relationship that everybody talks about, the huge NFL player, the star that is with a celebrity. But weirdly enough, if we're talking about last year's almost got it, but seems to be second and we don't talk about it enough, Josh Allen is dating a celebrity. If you know who Haley Stenfield is, maybe because her name is harder to say. She's been nominated for an Oscar, like in 2010, supporting actress for True Grit. She's got 2 albums out, apparently. She's been in the MCU and currently, I think, still is. She did like a Transformer movie. So it's not like she's not there, but we never really talk about Josh Allen and Haley Steinfeld the same way as we do the other crew. So maybe it's like you kind of fly under this radar, but every year you're there and every year you're scratching. So we'll see if this year you punch it through or if once again you're going to be the bridesmaid. Speaking of that person I was just alluding to, obviously with Rennie and your first pick, not your stud, but Kelsey's on the team, so you know I'm going to make some Taylor references. Your stud, though, I'd say Justin Jefferson, not only because you paid the most for him, but obviously your team is going to be focused a little bit more on his successes. You're hoping Minnesota has a still a decent offense, and I think honestly they probably will. You don't need to be that good to throw him the ball. Your swing, I kind of have your middle section here, your 5 through 7 wide receivers. You went Godwin, DK, and McLovin. All three great talents. All three could have awesome years, but all three have questions in their offense. DK, not so much. I think Seattle's offense is more proven. That's why you paid $10 for him. But I think that they get it done in a number of different ways. Plus, they do have some competition in terms of receiver. And then when it comes to Godwin and McLovin, it's just whether that offense can be good enough. I mean, Tampa Bay overachieved last year, or did they appropriately achieve? So I think your success is going to really swing with that. In terms of a steal, I think your kind of late QBs will pay off. I mean, you did pay a little bit for them, but where you took them, Goff and Herbert. Herbert, obviously, tremendous talent. We just got to see what the Chargers' offense looks like. It's supposed to be more run heavy, but obviously that's just to set up the throw, and he's got the arm to do it. And then Goff. Everyone's super big on Detroit's offense, but we always forget that Goff gets points, right? Obviously, he has to be active in that offense, or it does not work. So I think that was good steals. In terms of your stash, sticking with the Chargers and your hometown boys there, Lad McConkey, if you can hang on to him, obviously he's got a lot of value, and maybe he'll be, no one really knows which Chargers receiver is going to step up, but one or two of them probably will, and McConkey, if he can get onto the offense, why not? In terms of your sucker pick, now this could go a number of different ways. I did have the number of kind of older running backs you're chilling with, the Tennessee, Pittsburgh end of things. I mean, you have Pollard and Najee, both people I'm not always huge on that are going to have to step up for you to give you some of that running back depth behind Kyron. I also, controversially, Kelsey, once again, could be the top tight end, and he's certainly going to be one of the top tight ends. It is just interesting because they know, in terms of Kansas City, they know what they need to do this year. They've done it before. They know they don't need to try every single game. And I think with their wide receivers, Kelsey will get love, but they might use him as partially decoy sometimes, or actually like the football first downs, but maybe he doesn't get all the electric looks because they want to save him. I know last year he was taking some plays off because he's older, and realistically they want another ring, which is why at first I was going to make a Taylor Swift reference, and you made some fearless picks, but instead I'm going the other way that's a little more Rennie based. Rennie wants a championship, and so do the Chiefs, so does Kelsey. He's coveting that ring. So I'm going Gollum as your comparison, because you're going to do anything it takes this year. Now, the trick will be with Kelsey is which ring is he going for, or does he want multiple this year? And you think you know what I'm going for there. But that's what I'm thinking for draft comparison. You're clearly in it to win it. The guys you took and just your overall attitude in terms of competitive nature, you had an off season last year, so I think you're swinging for the fences this year. Timmer, if I'm not mistaken, you had to auto draft last year, so it was great to have you in it this year, so at least you could make some of your own calls, and I think it helps out the whole draft. Looking at your picks, so you did go for a big stud in Taylor, and honestly didn't spend that much less, and also got Pacheco, so your running backs are quite solidified. I'd include those as your strengths here. In terms of a swing, what could swing you here? Once again, you did this last year in auto draft, and you're doing it now by choice. You're taking Tua as your only quarterback. Tua is not the person, but you went one quarterback last year. I'm interested, though, if you're already thinking about making some ad drops or where you want to work there. You do get two. Your steal, by far, I think for me, $8 for Rice is going to pay off massively. You do have some other wide receivers that you didn't spend a lot for that I think could certainly help you out, but he's the one I'd highlight. Stash, if you can keep a hold of Chase Brown, a lot of people are saying he could make some movement in Cincinnati's backfield there, and so I think he's someone, if you hang on to, could pay off. Your sucker pick, I think it's a number of picks, and I don't mean that in a bad way. You just hitched your wagon on some questionable offenses. I think Stevenson's a talent, but New England, I don't know how well they're going to really be doing. Cleveland in terms of Cooper, I don't even think their offense is going to be that good. You got Tennessee, Tampa Bay. So these are all teams that you need to succeed for some of your mid-range guys to come up, and I think those might end up being something you have to work with this year, which leads me to comparison, because it's funny here. Your team is just filled with a lot of these people. You got the Waddles, the Kittles, the Evans, the people that we know will score points. And some weeks will go off and just like win it for you. But they're not always the people that were going for 50, 40, 30. You know, like you didn't even spend over 38 was your top, which is still quite high. And you weren't the person who spent the least amount for sure on a number one. But you've got a lot of those guys in the middle. So I went with Jake Gyllenhaal, weirdly enough, because sometimes he makes those choices, right? Like you're a tough team. Tough to read, not always on the gets the spotlight, but makes crafty decisions, and sometimes can be just that badass who's dropping people down, like in Roadhouse, the remake, or sometimes he makes really poor decisions and kind of falls short, like in Roadhouse, the remake at the end of the movie. But realistically enough, he's capable of the Academy nominated performances. He's also capable of just giving you that movie of week, and I think a lot of your guys are in that. But I think personally, I think you got enough to push you through, and I think you actually got quite a tough team this year. I think also just Gyllenhaal, we could go broke back and grow a beard and get all Montana on it. So I just thought it was appropriate for this particular selection of players. Rushke had a super interesting range here, and I think you went out early and spent a lot of money on a QB, and then you got a stud in CeeDee Lamb. You weren't scared of spending some money. I think you knew a lot of your guys would go cheap, and so you had a long list, and you ended up picking them up. I think your swings will probably be in your running backs. If Derrick Henry can make a new home, Jacobs, new home, if they can kind of cash in for you, that's fine, because I think Gus the Bus and Blake Corum is someone who will come up later. But those are, a wide range even there within your wide receiver group, your running back group. I think your wide receivers are kind of your steals, because I think a lot of them, not CeeDee Lamb, obviously you had to pay for it. But if you look at that mid-range, I think that can be both kind of your high and your low. I had your steal and your sucker kind of in the same boat. The nice thing is you took so many of them that you would assume some of them will pan out, and then some that don't, you can make the move. Your stash, you got so many of the players like the Blake Corums and Duze, even Caleb to an extent. Obviously you went super Chicago heavy. I think even Brock Bowers, some people are really, really big on. I know he's a great talent. The Las Vegas offense, I'm just not super keen on. Plus, just looking at his picture, he just seems like the kind of guy who yells at his own name when he finishes. But if he can do all right, I think you got a good group of people here. In terms of your comp, I was originally going to go for the super young angle. Then I was going to go, obviously it's Chicago and you got to bring it home. You went big. And I think, sorry, I didn't mention your steal because it's in the same idea. It could be Fields, right? Pittsburgh, we don't know what's going to happen. Already I'm hearing, scratches of an injury. If Fields gets in for $1, that could end up paying off. Then you maybe have a tough decision with Caleb and Richardson. So we'll see how that goes. So anyway, with the Chicago bit, I could go Ditka. I could go like, even the Norm ripoff from SNL. But, if we're going hometown hero and someone that a lot of people kind of have that value in, but you took some big risks, let's go Devin Hester as your guy, because I think he's a little more modern. Plus, I think you got a lot of skill sets here. It's just whether or not who's going to pay off and if you make the right moves at the right time. So could be an exciting year for you, buddy. Both in fantasy, and it might be fun to be a Bears fan again. Last and certainly not least, in fact, according to Yahoo, last and best, we got Maxton's team. You did take the first player off the board, the highest paid of overall. We got CMC. Now, you had him last year. He worked for you pretty well. We're hoping the same for you this year, obviously, or you're hoping the same. We're kind of hoping for anything but. I think he's obviously your stud. In terms of swing, and this is where I'm not going to try and lead into something I say later on, but I do think those kind of middle receivers you took, the 19 for Olave, the 20 for London, great talents, and in a slightly better offensive situation than the other. They have weeks where they go off, and I think they're meant to have career years this year, and if they do, that's huge for you. If not, I think the wide receiver position is something you're going to be battling with if they don't cash in. Your steal, I got to think, Mostert for 7. He was, look at last year. I know everyone's big on AJ, including myself, but he was phenomenal last year, and you don't really need him to be as phenomenal. If he can even be a half of what he is, I think that's your running back 2. Monty as well, I know you're big on, running back 3, Monty being your running back 2. But those are two people that between the two of them, I think you're pretty set, so I think that was a good call. Your stash, Hollywood Brown, I think to solve your wide receiver problem once he gets healthy in that Kansas City offense, I think he could be trouble for a lot of people, so I think that would be a good stash if you can keep him. Your sucker, I don't know if New Orleans has a wide receiver I'd want, and you have all of them now. Olave obviously has a tremendous amount of talent. So does Shaheed, but you know who's driving that car in the offense, and I think even when you get booed from your hometown fans so quickly, that could be an issue. But last year I found I had a lot of Saints, and as long as you don't watch the game, then you're fine, because watching it is really frustrating because they don't get their points until like 1 point in the game. But if you can withstand it or just not watch it and look at the highlights/scores after, I think you'll be fine. In terms of your comparison, you already kind of gave me one with AC Slater, but I got to think your team has this big home run energy. I think you're another guy going for the W this year in a very big way, in an ISU way, I suppose. So as the kids right now, and man, our grade 8 boys just hella annoying. Are you Sigma Slater or are you Simp Slater? Are you going to be the Mario Lopez, who is the Jesse Spano dating, dressed to the nines version of AC Slater? Are you going to be the elastic jeans wearing preppy calling kind of, like I said, simp version of AC Slater? That one we don't know, but Mario Lopez is definitely now my avatar for you running forward. So let's see how it goes. Legacy, like I said, I'm going to try my best to have these as weekly productions. I don't know how realistic that'll be, but let's see. It might force me to shut up and actually get down to it. So speaking of which, hopefully you get a chance to watch this just before week 1. A nice little intro to get you excited. We're dealing with multiple time zones, so maybe you're waking up early in the morning, or maybe this is just before you go to bed to hopefully wake up in the morning and watch football. That's where I am now in the world. But either way, again, it was awesome to see you last week. I wish everyone the best of luck and have fun during week 1, folks.